The following podcast is a W2M Network original production. Visit W2Mnet.com for all of our other great podcasts, plus news, reviews, articles, and opinions from the worlds of wrestling, video games, football, and entertainment.
Let's go! What's that? It's gonna be a football game tonight now. No doubt. It's gonna be a football game here. Okay. I done been here before. All right, let's go, baby.
9. Rushing 4, ball comes out of the hands of Newton. It's on the ground, and it's still on the ground. Picked up by T.J. Ward at the 4-yard line. Vaughn Miller did it again.
Alabama back on top of the college football world.
Ladies and gentlemen, football to the max.
Your host, Sean Garmer, Gary Vaughn, and Randy Isbell.
Alrighty, it's time, guys. NFL Week 2 is in the books. This is, of course, Football to the Max, NFL edition. I'm your host, Sean Garmer. With me, of course, the guys that make this podcast run smoothly, Mr. Randy Isbell and Gary Vaughn. Well, as Randy told me in the Messenger when Sunday ended, welcome to the NFL Parody League, because that's what this felt like after Week 2. A lot of teams that lost last week, they won this week.
Remember when we did this podcast a week ago, and we sat here and gave answers to all these questions of all these different teams of, okay, we're starting to figure out these teams after the first week. We'll kind of see how week 2 goes. Don't overreact too much to week 1. Well, this is why. Because everything you know is completely wrong with the NFL. Like, down is up and right is left, and the Jacksonville Jaguars, what the hell? I had so much faith in you, and you're right back to the junk time Jaguars already. Just...
Well, Gary, you have any opening thoughts here? Gary? All right.
This is a week.
There
you go, guys. This is a week where, you look at everything in the landscape of the league, and then you get to watch. As soon as you get comfortable with maybe one or two things completely change. I think Roddy Piper said something to the effect of, just when you think you have all the answers, I change all the questions. And, it's just the way it works here. And with all these new little things like injuries that are taking place and new quarterbacks going and being started and things like that, next week we're going to be saying the same thing. I thought this team was great, but, they were high on my power rankings, but they fell from, 23rd in 1 week. That's the way we're going to feel.
Yeah, this is, obviously positives from these teams, right? Like, a lot of these teams came back to score a ton of points they didn't score in the first game. And some of these teams went to perform just as badly. It's going to be interesting to go through these games, obviously, but man, this league is just, again, that whole any given Sunday thing, it just does not seem to change much with the NFL, no matter what you're looking at. And we should probably start with the Monday night game that just ended. We have the Philadelphia Eagles going in to Chicago to take on the Bears, and this was very much like the first game for Chicago. Jay Cutler, just when he could throw it to Alshon Jeffrey down the field, very much like what we used to see with Matt Stafford and Calvin Johnson, they were good. When he couldn't do that because the Philadelphia Eagles defense was knocking him on his ass, he was starting to have problems. And Eddie Royal bailed him out a couple of times, and they were able to keep it close with that kick return or punt return, whatever it was, towards the end. But this was Eagles controlling the game, dominating the game, and Jay Cutler showing you that whatever bright spots he had last year, we're back to the same old Jay Cutler.
See, and I'm going to disagree a little bit of the idea that Philadelphia dominated this game and it was all of them. I really thought this was a great defensive battle in the first half. Chicago really held Carson Wentz in check. He had a great game, did Wentz, but struggled to find the end zone, just 3 field goals there. Chicago was able to find the end zone to keep it close, 9-7 at halftime. It was in the second half where things kind of fell off as early on. Jay Cutler fumbled the ball and went for it, and you could tell he had injured his right hand. He tried to fight through it, which for everyone that knows the history of Jay Cutler is completely different than the way we look at him. We remember him sitting on the bench during a playoff game because he felt like he couldn't go. He tried to fight through it, and it was actually the wrong decision. He went out there and just threw ducks all over the place on the first drive, and then the next one threw one of the worst passes ever because he just completely lost strength in his hand, and that was right when the game completely imploded for Chicago, as it was right after a touchdown. He throws the interception. They score one play later. The next drive, they bring in McCown, but there's a fumble by the running back, and Philadelphia scores again, and that was a game. So I thought it was really close until that injury. Yes, Jay Cutler was struggling the whole time and continued to really try to force the ball into Alshon Jeffrey. You could tell he really wasn't into getting Kevin White into the game plan as much as I think people were hoping he would. McCown comes in, and that's all he started, or not McCown, excuse me, Brian Hoyer comes in. McCown, Hoyer, same person. But he comes in, and I honestly think he balanced his passing attack a little bit different, but at that point, Philadelphia is just playing defense a little softer because the game is over at this point. But I thought it was a very competitive Monday night game. Give full credit to the Eagles, who are now 2-0 after I thought they were just dumping the season. Carson Wentz looks like he is ready for the NFL. And, a tough road win for the Eagles, and they're 2-0. So full credit to them.
Yeah, this game was, for me personally, kind of sleepy at the beginning. And, I, to be, honest, I watched it off and on. I have wrestling obligations I got to do on Monday nights, too. So I kind of flip back and forth. But, as I watched that first half, man, it was just kind of slow, field goal here, field goal there. Then finally, the Chicago does something. And this is the way I look at it too. I kind of agree with Randy. I think Philadelphia has done a great job in showing that they're better than the bottom of the league, if you ask me. I think Chicago's got a lot to work on. I think even before Cutler had that injury, they showed they got a lot to work on. And so, Philadelphia has got that blessing of having these two teams, the Cleveland Browns and the Chicago Bears, at the beginning of their schedule, and then they get to move on. And we really get to find out what they're all about, right? We get to find out, the next steps, and when they actually play somebody that's a little bit better than them, or maybe equal to them. So, but at the same time, you got to give them credit. They won the game, and they did what was necessary. All respect to them. I still question, do we really know what Philadelphia Eagles are because of the level of talent they've been playing?
No, absolutely, and we will find that out next week when they play Pittsburgh. But I will say, I know you guys do the wrestling podcast, so you were kind of watching in and out tonight, but I was fully invested due to fantasy reasons. I needed, 27 yards from Zach Miller, and he got me 33. Right at the end. So I was sweating bullets a little bit, especially because his third catch, I needed 9 yards and he got 7. And I'm going, of course, this is probably going to be the last time you get the ball. So I was fully invested into this. Thank you, fantasy. And that's why I love fantasy, is because I watch games like this that I usually would have changed the channel on.
Yeah, we always have games like that. I've got 2. I lost a championship game because Michael Vick slid a yard short. He would have slid a yard longer. I would have won a championship. And then I also won a game. I had Mark Ingram. We talked about it. It was like, I think, 15 seconds left on the clock. Mark Ingram's not going to get the ball, and if he does, he's going to run for 5 yards and fall down. He runs for 50 and wins the game on a touchdown, and I win my game. So I love those plays like that. Zach Miller just getting you just enough to do it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know if I probably did have, I know I have several leagues where I had Alshon Jeffrey, so I needed him to do really well, and he did fine. He did what you expect him to do. So, I always enjoy fantasy just for those reasons of, it's hard sometimes because I got to sit here and watch I do three things while Raw is going on. I'm watching my games usually that I'm supposed to watch for this. On one screen, I have Raw on my phone underneath that screen, and then I have the Monday night game on the TV next to me. So I have like all of it going at once, and I'm trying to pay attention to all of it, and sometimes it's like overwhelming, and sometimes you get in the good spots where two things are on commercial and you're only having to pay attention to one. But yeah, this game was fun to watch, and good God, John Gruden could not shut up about Carson Wentz. He was just, he might as well have been having an orgasm right on TV. Like, that's what this dude was doing the entire time. Seriously.
Yeah, it's about putting someone over. That's all he was doing. He was giving the kid some confidence, putting him over.
You do know they watch, when they go back and watch the game, they don't watch it with the commentary, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
That's what I'm saying, though.
Hold on. You were the one on Thursday telling me that if the Jets would have went for two, the commentary would have ate them apart and it would have made them fall apart. So you're telling me they don't listen to the commentary on the game and now they don't listen to the commentary afterwards?
The people are hearing it in the stands and they get all unset, and they're hearing the crowd starting to get unsettled, and they do hear that. So that's different. I'm talking about I don't know that Carson Wentz is going to go back and hear all of John Gruden's gushing about him constantly.
Oh, he will if he gets home and his Uncle Tom texts him and says, hey, me and Billy were watching the game, and man, he put you over big time tonight. I'd go back and watch it. I'd probably save that on DVD. So
save it on DVD.
Well, because eventually in 2 years when he's salesman of the week, he'll want to watch it.
Aww.
What are you trying to say? Oh, that's scary. Come on now.
I'm kidding. It's fun. It's fun.
All right, so let's get into the rest of the actual games from the weekend here. One that was actually interesting. Well, it may not have been interesting at all at one point, but then it became interesting because Jimmy Garoppolo went down, and midway through the third quarter, Jacoby Brissett had to come in, and all of a sudden the Miami Dolphins figured out that they could play offense. And they started scoring because they were getting the ball back without New England scoring on them. And they actually got it to within a touchdown because Gostkowski missed a field goal, which would have put the game away. They had one shot with a minute left. They couldn't do it. New England's defense holds on, but for that first half, Jimmy Garoppolo looked like Tom Brady, the second coming. He was just darting the thing all over the field. Martellus Bennett was a machine. Just Gronk, what? Like, Martellus Bennett just came in there. He was running everywhere, and every pass he caught was going like 20 yards. The dude was going nuts. LeGarrette Blount was pounding through people. Even when, the reason they were able to hold on was because when Brissett was in there, Blount was running people over, and he hurdled someone to get 20 more yards. That dude was on it. Total team effort from the Patriots, but I know they said it's not a broken collarbone. That was a fake account that apparently had had tweeted that out at one point. It's like a busted AC joint or something, so he is going to miss a Thursday game, which I always thought that there was going to be one game on the schedule that was going to be the hardest for them to win. It was, aside from Arizona, it was going to be the Houston game because of the defense they're playing and all that. But if you lose one out of the others, I don't think it's the worst thing if that's the only one Garoppolo can't play. Just Brissett really looked like a backup quarterback, whereas Garoppolo never did. He was having to run around and, just look like completely different two teams when they played each other in the two halves. But New England wins the second game out of the 4 that Tom Brady's not around, and I'm sure Randy is just not happy about it.
Uh-oh. Randy's not won't even talk about it.
Yeah.
I was trying to see if you guys could hear me shaking my head no. My mom always said my head was full of rocks. I was testing it out.
Oh, well, this is too hard I guess to hear it. But the one thing is I'm really curious what you think. I mean, do you think? This is proof that New England is just that anomaly. Like, it's no matter what happens, they can go to the third string quarterback and still win, no matter what.
It's an anomaly that I wish would go away. They're just so good, and that's why I think everyone latches on to Deflategate or Spygate, because they're just trying to find a way to knock New England down because they're an anomaly. We were just talking about how the NFL has all this parity, and New England just is above it. Their backup quarterback comes in, and as Sean said, looked amazing at the beginning of this game. I didn't realize that Garoppolo also had control of the defense, because once he went away, as once again Sean said, Miami all of a sudden was scoring left and right. But yes, I don't think New England will win on Thursday. I thought it was going to be tough anyways. But I guarantee you I will not put money against them on Thursday, because Bill Belichick proves that once you say, okay, it's over, they're not doing this, he's going to go out and do it. So it's just crazy how things work. I'm sure he will put a super simple game plan out there. I'm going to guess Gronk doesn't play on a short week. They'll have him wait one more before I believe they play Buffalo the week after. So let him get some extra rest and just basically run LeGarrette Blount and dump off to Bennett and Edelman and keep it close and hope the defense can get to Osweiler. But it's just so crazy to think that the Patriots are about to start a third-string quarterback, and I refuse to put money on them losing.
At this point, the New England Patriots are a well-oiled machine, and I almost feel like that they could go and just call up a free agent quarterback and just say, hey, Michael Vick, you feel like playing tonight? You're like, well, I haven't really practiced. Well, it doesn't matter. Come in. You can look at our playbook. Let's just get you in there. And they'd still find a way to win with a guy that's been sitting on his couch for 4 months. So, this team just knows how to get things done. I'm not saying I'm going to pick them next week. I don't know. We'll see. We'll talk about that Thursday. But right now, I'm just amazed at this team. No matter what injuries come their way, they just overcome.
Yeah, the only thing I will say is perhaps they think that Brissett needs the help, so they might think about playing Gronk, but they did work out his brother today. So, perhaps baby Gronk will get out there and do the job. Never know. Could be the second coming.
There you go.
But we'll move on now from that matchup. Of course, we already talked about we've covered all the AFCs now, so we can get out of there. And the AFC North had 2 divisional matchups against each other. And let me tell you something about this Ravens and Browns game. What the the Browns get out to a 20-2 lead because all they needed was to replace RG3 with Josh McCown, because obviously Josh McCown has a grasp on the offense because he played almost all year with it last year. And it didn't matter who's playing at receiver, he was finding Corey Coleman like nobody's business. And Gary Barnes, of course, he didn't get the amazing looks that Gary was predicting in his fantasy rankings, but he did get more yards than he did with RG3. And, just it was really weird because there were so many times Joe Hayden could have had like 2 or 3 more interceptions from Joe Flacco, but ultimately Joe Flacco knows how to sling that ball around. And, you guys that were not sold on Mike Wallace, I told you, watch out for Mike Wallace this year. That's his favorite target. And the guy just gets touchdowns. And Steve Smith Sr. doing pretty well, but I still think you need to wonder about who the real number 1 receiver is over there. And the tight ends are going nuts.
Yeah, I was going to say, yes, I was not a believer in Mike Wallace, and he has become a big touchdown threat, but I was just going to throw in there, I don't think he's his number 1 target. The tight end Dennis Pitta is his number 1 target.
Yeah, it's he's finding Pitta everywhere, and if not, it's one of the other tight ends. It felt like they have like 20 tight ends that were just getting the ball. And Forsett, actually, I think, did better passing than he did running. That's one thing that Cleveland was kind of able to bear down. But just a classic case of, McCown threw interceptions I think he threw an interception really at the wrong time. They just couldn't, after they got that lead, Baltimore just kept chipping away, and Cleveland just couldn't, when you get those quick scores like Crowell going 85 yards for a rushing touchdown and Coleman going on that big score that he did, and just it really inflates you. And then when you have to get down to the Ravens start coming back, I wonder if they lose some of that confidence. But also McCown was hurt for, I think, at least through the third quarter on. And now Cody Kessler is your quarterback going forward for the Browns. So when you think it gets better, it gets worse. Feel bad for them.
Yeah, absolutely. McCown was looking good until the injury and could barely move his non-throwing arm. So I'm sure that really affected everything else. And it's bad in Cleveland when, again, they're going to start Cody Kessler, and they just had to add Charlie Whitehurst to the roster. Yes,
dude,
Charlie
when does
Whitehurst
that guy not get a
still
job?
In the NFL.
He's rich off of just being a backup.
Oh, yeah, it's true. It really is. And, it's kind of sad for Cleveland because it looked like they had a pretty good shot here. It seemed like everything fell apart after the Baltimore Ravens blocked that extra point and ran it back for 2 points. And then from there on, of course, you mentioned it, McCown getting hurt. Just the defense was not able to contain Mike Wallace after that. It just got a little dirty.
Yeah, it certainly did. They had lots of weapons they had to contain. And like I said, Joe Hayden gets a few of those that could have been interceptions. Maybe we're talking about a different result here. But Cleveland got really close, and this shows that maybe perhaps they should have gone with McCown to start with and had RG3 kind of sit around for a little bit. But now RG3 might be out 10 to 12 weeks, apparently. So we may not see him for a long while. Let's get into that other AFC North match at the Pittsburgh Steelers and Cincinnati Bengals. I think this was your game, Randy. What do you think?
Yeah, just welcome to your typical AFC North, just slugfest. The offenses didn't get as wide open as I thought they were going to. I saw this more as a shootout going in, but both defenses really were able to contain the madness. Antonio Brown doesn't do much in this game. A.J. Green doesn't do much in this game. So it really was the running backs in the passing game that were the big difference. Giovanni Bernard, 100 yards on 9 catches and a touchdown. That is your running back for Cincinnati, leading the way by a long margin. And Pittsburgh, D'Angelo Williams was able to run the ball a bit better, but You could tell that they were really just trying to force the ball to kind of keep that balance going, but he makes the big catch late to seal the deal. But this is one of those games where, yes, Cincinnati is now 1-1 and are going to be looking up at Pittsburgh for a while, but you could tell that these two teams are extremely evenly matched, and when they face off again, don't be surprised if the result is the exact opposite. So I'm really excited to be able to see that. These are the two that are going to be battling it out all the way for the AFC North title, and I'm pretty sure the other one's going to get one of the wild cards. They're both that good.
Yeah, I agree. And, Pittsburgh is just continually impressing me. It seems like Big Ben is just on his rhythm right now, and he's finding his receivers, and he's able to get out of tight situations. This game proved it, and think about it. This game was in the driving rain. I mean, rain in this game. So it wasn't easy for either team, but, they still worked it out. And, I think, like Randy said, next game that these two face off, it's going to be gloves off again.
Oh, certainly. I mean, these are two teams that play each other really tough. I mean, now you got the history from the playoffs and all that. I mean, this might be the biggest rivalry that the NFL has right now. Again, just these two, every time they play each other, it's going to be rough. They're going to slug it out. And this time the Steelers won because they have proven to be the better team over these 2 weeks. So it's going to be interesting to see how the rest of this, these few weeks that come go on. But, the Steelers right now, they look really, really good. Not that the Bengals aren't really close with them, but, it's going to happen. It's the Steelers at home. They're going to play pretty well there. Moving on to another interesting matchup here, the Houston Texans and Kansas City Chiefs. Houston, that defense came to play. J.J. Watt just needed another week off. He was back to himself in this game. Forced a fumble, sacks. He was in Alex Smith's face. The rest of that defense was on point as well, forcing things. They were forcing Kansas City to do things they don't normally do, which is turnovers. That's the story of this game, really, was Houston just forcing turnovers. And then Houston kept them in it because they couldn't really run the ball much with Lamar Miller. He wasn't as effective as he was in the first game. It was about Osweiler having to pass, and Hopkins and Fuller did fine, but just they gave the Chiefs a lot of chances. And the Chiefs defense, to be fair, Marcus Peters, I think, intercepted Osweiler about 2 or 3 times. One of them, if he wouldn't have gone out of bounds, would have been like the third or fourth one. So the Chiefs held their own defensively. They couldn't ever get in a rhythm on offense. Whether they'd get a big long run from Spencer Ware, and then they couldn't connect on passes, or they get some nice passes going, and then they would have to punt, or they couldn't convert on a short third and something. And that's kind of how the game went. And then towards the end, when they were starting to really get things going, it just didn't happen for them. And I think Houston so far has looked really good in these 2 games. I think they looked much better in the first one, but when you're going to play a tough defense like Kansas City, you're kind of bound to come down a little bit. But right now, I think Houston, they certainly look the best out of all the teams in the AFC South.
Yeah, I agree, and they really are working hard to, make sure that offense stays comfortable for Brock Osweiler. I also like the fact that, Lamar Miller is doing a great job. This game is a tougher task for him. We all know the Kansas City's defense is very, tough team to play, but he still was able to get out there and, perform at a decent level. So, at the end of the day, Brock Osweiler was able to have some success that maybe you didn't expect. And, him getting the ball out to DeAndre Hopkins, getting his big score, And of course that defense, Sean just told you all about. I mean, the Houston defense took care of business. But the biggest story here to me is, we all had Kansas City with high expectations, and their offense is stuttering. They're not really doing what they need to do, and that affects the defense.
I don't know if this changes my opinion on their offense. Obviously, Houston, with one of the better defenses out there, were just able to keep them in check here. This was as close as a game I really thought it was. Both defenses played extremely well. I still think Osweiler sucks. He had one good pass. But they have done a great job game planning around him with Lamar Miller. Will Fuller is an excellent receiver, so to have two weapons like him and Hopkins, most quarterbacks, even Charlie Whitehurst could quarterback this team. But really, that's just how Houston's going to win games. It's nice, close. Hope Osweiler doesn't make too many mistakes. Let the defense do their thing and let Lamar Miller wear them out. And that's exactly all they needed to do with Kansas City.
Yeah. And sorry, I don't have the things in front of me for some reason. I don't know why I just did that, but I should have had it open and I didn't. But Gary, I mean, these part two of the New York Giants and New Orleans Saints was not the shootout the first one was.
No, it wasn't. Not at all. And, it was a little bit of a surprise because I think all of us coming in really felt like it was going to be a 38-45 score. And let's be honest, that was just way overestimating it. It did not do anything like that. I mean, if you would have told me it was going to be 16-13 at the end of the day, I would have been like, are you talking about Tampa Bay? Is that the game you're talking about? It just was really, really interesting. I felt like, both teams had some shots here. But really at the end of the day, it came down to a field goal to win this. And, in fact, I mean, the Saints actually, made a little bit more effort and comeback towards the end there. They got 10 points in that fourth quarter, whereas, the Giants were only able to score 2 field goals. And that was a little bit of a surprise. I just think it really, at the end of the day, New York proved that once again their defense can hold on. They can do some good things, getting pressure on Drew Brees. And on the flip side, I think that New York I hate to say came down to earth because I really don't think they came down to earth. I just think that in this game, they weren't making the plays they needed to make. I feel like that was the case here. I really do think a lot of the Giants right now, even though this game was close, I still feel like they are a really good team, and that defense is nothing to mess with.
Yeah, the big takeaway for me is, the Giants just weren't able to find the end zone. I mean, Eli Manning still throws for 368 yards, so it wasn't like the offense was sputtering, but I was really impressed with how New Orleans played defense and bent but didn't break the entire game, especially after the shootout they had against Oakland, which is another reason why I thought this was going to be the same thing as last year. And that's what we talked about on the fantasy podcast, was how many points are going to be put up and how you wanted every piece of it. But give full credit to New York to not get a single offensive touchdown and still find a way to hold serve at home and win the game.
Yeah, certainly. This was, damn it, why am I blanking right now? I'm bad on this. This was a lot more defensive than I thought it was going to be. And the Giants, again, looking good. And, I think we really need to watch out for the Giants in this division here. I know we were sort of saying I was going to come down to the Redskins and the Cowboys or whatever, but, I mean, the Giants
never said that.
This defense.
Randy's been on.
Yeah, Randy's been on him, but this Giants defense has been as advertised. What they paid for, they've gotten so far, and it's going to be interesting when they get further down into some of these teams that maybe play like them and aren't necessarily the run them out teams like the New Orleans, if they're going to be able to keep up that way. But moving along, we have Randy, why? Jesus, I've got to sit here and have a better system for this than I do right now. It probably doesn't also help that it's 5 o'clock in the morning. But the Chargers and Jaguars.
Uh-huh.
I'm sorry, Randy, but the Jaguars that you had so much faith in.
What the hell? I'm just gonna hope that it's because Chris Ivory is out that everything has fallen apart, right? I mean, it's because he's gone. The defenses forgot how to play, and it's his fault. That no, it's just, and we're gonna talk about it later with Oakland as well. I just think, and this very much includes me, but we saw these young defenses that were showing signs of improvement last year that went out and got a lot of talent in the offseason, both through free agency and the draft, that we were like, okay, this is their time to take that next step. And it's going to take some growing pains. And you saw lots of growing pains here. San Diego went out and just smacked them around. Give the Chargers 100% of the credit in this game. Phillip Rivers, loses Danny Woodhead in the middle of the game. Woodhead's now out for the year, so put him with Keenan Allen as just more Chargers injuries. But the fact that they jumped out on Kansas City, but lost that game, and now just jumped all over Jacksonville. Not only do I think I overrated Jacksonville a little bit, especially Jacksonville's defense, I probably underrated San Diego, which I'm sure somebody is very happy to hear me say this. But this was a game that really surprised me through and through, and I'm trying not to overact and just give up on Jacksonville. I'm going to put this towards growing pains of a young team. And they just completely got outmatched. 100% San Diego owned this game.
Yeah, Randy, I mean, you have to take my advice from last week when I kind of overreacted a little bit for a team. We'll talk about that team later. I'm trying not to overreact for either of these teams because I kind of think that Jacksonville has got to be a better team than they showed on Sunday. And then again, San Diego really impressing me in these two games, really showing that they have an offense. They can move the ball, score some points. If their defense can hold up, they can be a force to be reckoned with. And I think that, what I said before the season even started is we kind of gave the San Diego Chargers lots of grief. Rochelle heard us do it every, other podcast when it came to preseason. And I said, well, don't be surprised. We're saying all these bad things about them, and they're going to turn around.
That I did not share that opinion.
In fact, Sean said they belonged in college football, which we told Sean he was wrong.
I did not say that ever.
But we will leave that alone.
So Gary's just trying to get the heat off himself again.
And Melvin Gordon, the touchdown machine, like we all thought he was going to be.
Oh, yeah, right? That was me, Randy. Me and you had that like top on our fantasy draft list, right? Melvin Gordon.
Yeah, I did, but it was the 2015 draft board that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Well, hey, at least he's doing something. Just took him that whole year to figure out how to get to the end zone. So,
exactly.
That's it takes a year. Yeah, I mean, look, this is great for the Chargers. They, even without losing pieces, and that really sucks to lose Woodhead. That was a nice 1-2 punch that they had, and now you're gonna have to just start at the drawing board again. At least Woodhead's taking it in stride and just saying that now he gets to spend time with his kids and everything. But that sucks for the Chargers. Let's see how they do going forward without him. I mean, it's not like they just got all these awesome weapons on offense here. Moving on to a game that I don't know how Peyton Manning was always involved in this since 1993 if he didn't get drafted until he was in 1998. But that was the narrative I kept hearing was this Broncos and Colts game. Man, I think this is sort of what I watched a lot of this, and I kind of got what we expected out of here. Andrew Luck was actually able to keep pace for a while, but the Broncos pulled away, and the Colts again for the third consecutive year, 0-2.
Yeah, and for the most part, I mean, I felt like Andrew Luck did a great job under duress at times and was able to make this a game. It just became to a situation where honestly the Denver Broncos defense prevails again, and of course their offense just makes things happen. I mean, Denver really did a good job running the ball with C.J. Anderson. He got a score, and Simeon is making decisions that are good for the team and not going all out and going crazy. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, I think this game was a little bit closer than maybe what people expected. I think, even me coming into this game, I thought, okay, Denver is going to come in here and squash them because Andrew Luck's not going to be able to handle the pressure. And that's not what happened here.
Just Denver is so good, especially on defense. Possibly even better than last year. But I think this is how Denver is going to win their games. I think they're going to look dominant for most of it, but the score is going to be close. Simeon, to me, has not really proven himself as that next guy. He's doing his part of not making that many mistakes, but no touchdowns in this game against a pretty weak defense in the Colts. C.J. Anderson does his part, but really this game was won by the defense. A pick six in the third quarter, followed by that strip sack that was returned for a touchdown that basically cinched the game. I mean, you think about it, there were, just under 2 minutes to go, Indianapolis has the ball down 6. Right? You had to think against most defenses, you favor the Colts to go down there and get that game-winning drive, but they went down there and shut the door. So Denver is going to be one of those teams that is going to win far more games than I probably gave them credit for, because of how good that defense is, because of how good that running game is now, that even with Simeon out there, it's going to be very tough to defeat this team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you make a great point about the Colts defense. They were missing, I can't tell you how many defensive backs. So, I mean, and Simeon really didn't take advantage of that. So,
he's still, he's a game manager right now. He's trying to just get him through the games. He's not out there to try to make all the flashy plays.
I know. But once again, fantasy owners, Demaryius Thomas, poor guy.
Yeah, that's why I really just avoided Demaryius Thomas. I had to draft him in one league because it was auto draft, but, it is, trust me, I want Demaryius Thomas to be doing well, but that's kind of them breaks sometimes. Randy, I didn't think anybody, I don't know that people thought that the 49ers would score that many points on the Panthers, but the Panthers take care of business.
Yeah, absolutely. They pull away in the second half, but you know what? Full credit to San Francisco. We all wrote this team off for dead coming into the season. We figured, they've been making some good strides for, in a few years, they're going to be fine, but right now they're rebuilding and getting over all these early retirements, and Blaine Gabbert's their quarterback. So, the 49ers. But you know what? Their destruction of the Rams was probably more them than Los Angeles, and they kind of showed it here as for the first half, they looked, just one step behind Carolina instead of the 30 steps we thought they were going to be. They really took it to them and kept this thing close, especially for a running game that really couldn't get things going. But full credit to Cam Newton and those Panthers. They made the big plays, and I said it in the fantasy podcast today. I have to say it again. Kelvin Benjamin is back and with a vengeance, and he could be, fantasy-wise, the number one wide receiver by the end of the year, because him and Cam Newton have rekindled that friendship, and he's just a beast. I'm so glad he's healthy. It's so fun to watch him play, and it just makes this offense even better. I think a lot of people are going to forget how good Carolina is for a few weeks because they did lose to Denver in that opening week. But this offense is scary good, and that defense is really good as well.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is it kind of surprised me because of those two facts that the 49ers did so well. But, you got to give them credit. They, took the opportunities that Carolina afforded them, and they made something happen out of it. So, At the end of the day, do I think that the San Francisco 49ers are a terrible team? Not anymore. But do I think that they're a great team? No, I don't. I still think they're middle of the road, but I do think they have some talent there, and maybe they are better than I ever expected this year. So.
Yeah. We now move on to the next. I'm sorry, Randy, but this must have been such a dynamic to go from the Panthers 49ers where they were scoring points to a Seahawks or Rams game where they just, I don't know what was going on, but they couldn't score anything.
Sorry. I laughed through the game. It's
3 points by the Seahawks. My God.
I only laugh because I have a buddy who just, they barely sneak out, week one. They have that great drive to come back and beat Miami, and he's going off. Russell Wilson for MVP. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your Seattle Seahawks of 2016. And get used to it. This is just, I'm not saying they're a terrible team. I'm not saying that they're going to fall off the map. I still think they have a great chance to make the playoffs, but this is them. And until Pete Carroll figures out that he can no longer coach this team the way he did over the past few seasons. The offensive line is awful. We knew that last year. But we kind of just wrote it off because Russell Wilson could run around, buy some time, and then make the big play. And that was their offense. They would look ugly, but then the next thing you know, he would hit a 70-yard touchdown pass to Tyler Lockett. And then the next drive, he would hit a 50-yard touchdown to Doug Baldwin. And that's just how they worked. That's not happening now because Russell Wilson got banged up week one and is no longer as mobile as he was before. The offensive line is still terrible. The running game is not there. Thomas Rawls is still banged up. But they're still trying to do the big plays. So they're not being able to buy as much time, and they're still trying to get it down there, and it's not working. They need to bring the offense in, rein it in, do the New England offense where they're throwing it 5-6 yards, dink and dunk their way down there, and clock manage and let that defense do its thing. Because we've seen in both of these two games, both which I thought they should have probably lost, that the defense was amazing. The defense is just as good as it has been, but the fact is, both games come down to needing a late-minute drive. They were able to do it in Miami. They had a great chance against the Rams, but Christian Michael fumbles the ball, which blew up my Facebook as people were saying, cut Michael, all over the place, instead of realizing that he's not the reason you lost that game. You scored 3 points. You scored 1 touchdown in the first 2 games. So I'm not saying this is all over for Seattle, but until Seattle realizes that they're not the same offense that they've been over the last few years and kind of rein it back in a little bit, you're going to see more games like this.
Yeah, and I have to openly admit, I really felt like, Seattle was going to own this game. And this is the knee-jerk reaction I was kind of talking about earlier. I really thought, man, Los Angeles looks awful. They just look so lost. Their defense isn't doing anything. Their offense is just kind of going blindly around. And then they get into this game, and they show me that, hey, that defense is for real. It was what I thought. I look back at my week one power rankings. I thought, oh man, Los Angeles, they're going to be so good defensively. I had them pretty darn high, and then I jumped off the bandwagon immediately. Well, I may have done it too fast and too hard. Seattle, like Randy said, there's a lot of situations there that could lead to them being in even worse shape down the line because, if that offensive line doesn't hold up at all, you're going to see Russell Wilson get hurt even worse. And think about this team without Russell Wilson at all. That's scary. I don't care how good of a defense you have. It's not going to work if you don't have Russell Wilson around. So at the end of the day, I'm with Randy. I'm not going to jump off and say that these guys are going to be terrible, but they've got to fix something because if they don't, they are going to be in bad shape.
And give credit to Pete Carroll because he did come out today and say exactly that the injury changes their offense and they're going to have to work on it. They do have San Francisco coming to town this Sunday, which will be an interesting matchup because, again, I think San Francisco has taken a bigger step forward than any of us gave them credit for, and that is a divisional matchup that usually is pretty close, but it is in Seattle. And then they go to New York to host the Jets, who can get burnt deep. So let's see if Pete Carroll wants to go back to that well there. So it's going to be interesting to see how Seattle plays over the next couple weeks. I do think they are still playoff bound, but just not the same Seattle team that we're used to.
So they did this last year too. Whenever we and many other people were starting to doubt them and say, "Oh, it's not the same Seattle team," and then all of a sudden they went on that run, and yeah, they faltered in the playoffs. But it is what it is, and sometimes some teams are slow starting. I don't think we need to put. It's just 9-3. Lord, I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I don't think anybody expects 9-3 when that's going on. That going on. So, we move it along as well here to another game that I don't think anybody expected to be the way it was. The Cardinals and Bucks, Gary. Jeez, Arizona was mad.
And boy, did they take it out on the Bucks. I mean, poor Jameis Winston. He was so happy with himself in Week 1. I mean, he really felt like he had done a great job. And then coming into this game, I would think he really thought, man, I'm going to be able to match up with these guys. That's not the way it was at all. I mean, the Arizona Cardinals just completely went off on this team. I mean, they just kept scoring and scoring and scoring. It's like the bleeding couldn't stop. And my goodness, Arizona, they get to give them credit. Tampa Bay didn't allow any points in the first quarter. That's great. But 24 points right away in that second quarter, unanswered. That takes you to halftime, kind of defeated already. And so I'm sure that didn't help with the rest of this game. But, man, I was just amazed by the way that, we had Arizona just completely just assert their will. Larry Fitzgerald, kind of forgot about it a little bit. He's the old man. He's the guy that's, just kind of hanging around. He showed, quickly that, no, he's not that old. And really, Carson Palmer got the ball around. I mean, his 3 big receivers caught touchdowns. I mean, you just got to be happy if you're an Arizona fan to see that kind of performance out of those guys.
Yeah, I mean, talk about it's crazy what Jameis Winston goes and throws all those interceptions and everything else. It's just you don't expect that after how good he's looked and everything people have been saying about him. You're saying, oh, Jameis Winston's for real. The Tampa Bay Bucks, they're going to be moving up places, and man, not what you got here.
Yeah, not at all. And Randy, I mean, I look at Jameis Winston as still being a good player. This doesn't skew that. I just think he had to face a good defense, and I mean, I think that's just really what it boiled down to. I'm not losing too much faith in Winston just yet.
No, not at all. I just think this game snowballed on him. Arizona came out, punched him in the mouth, and he got a little dazed. Also, losing Doug Martin did not help things as it kind of changed their game plan. This game just completely got away from a young team. Arizona was out to prove a point, and they certainly did, and Tampa Bay was just the victims of it.
Yeah. Poor Tampa Bay. Well, they'll bounce back, I'm sure. But speaking of bounce back, the Atlanta Falcons bounce back and get in a shootout with the Oakland Raiders. Man, I'm going to have to go drop the Raiders defense for my fantasy team. I've picked them up in a lot of leagues, and they are just making me look like terrible. I think a lot of people, including myself and many of us here, were just thinking the Raiders were going to have this terrific defense that's going to shut people down. And the first 2 weeks, all that's been happening is people just scoring mountains of points on them. this did not end with Matt Ryan, of course, finding Julio Jones and everybody else. Of course, they did get a lucky touchdown that bounced into Justin Hardy's hands. But Devonta Freeman and Tevin Coleman also combined for some good yardage, and just it seemed like the Raiders couldn't do anything to stop Matt Ryan on this day, honestly. And on the other end, really, they weren't stopping Derek Carr either. Or Latavius Murray or Amari Cooper or anyone. Just it was a good old-fashioned shootout game, and Atlanta just happened to stop the Raiders the one time that they could, which is at the end.
Yeah, you're right. And, this is kind of a shock in a way because, Jack Del Rio, he kind of came into this thing and built this thing upon having a strong defense and, of course, really honestly building up a lot of talent on offense. And that's completely what we did not get enough of here. And, Atlanta just outplayed them at the end of the day. And, it was a back and forth at times. But, I just think that there's got to be some changes for that Oakland defense because they made the Atlanta's offense look like it was doing, what it used to do back in the early of last year. So I don't know. Something's got to change there in Oakland.
Yeah, I said it earlier when I was talking about Jacksonville. This was a team that a lot of us thought was going to be greatly improved on that side of the ball, and it's just not there yet. We're going to have growing pains. Obviously, you don't want it to be this bad. And they're going to have to try to make some adjustments and figure things out. Jack Del Rio is a good defensive coach, so let's see what kind of adjustments he can make. I don't think they're anywhere near, out of the picture for the division. I still like their chances to compete there, but, the longer it takes to figure out this defense, the further away Denver and Kansas City are going to get.
Certainly. They won one really close by a tough decision by Jack Del Rio. Now they lose one like this. They're going to have to start shoring it up on the defensive end, or this is going to be some crazy year for them trying to just outdo everybody on offense. So what teams have we not talked about yet here? I think we have a couple of games left. The Lions and Titans also in a close one. This 16-15 the final score.
Yeah, just chalk this game up to another game that just proves that I had no clue what was going on in the NFL going into week 2. I thought this was going to be a shootout. I thought Stafford was going to be able to pick apart the Titans secondary. None of that was the case. Abdullah goes out with an injury. So we'll kind of see what happens there. DeMarco Murray was phenomenal both on the ground and through the air. 56 receiving yards and 89 rushing yards. Just a battle of two teams that didn't know how to get into the end zone for the most part. And it ends with Tennessee being able to score the final 13 points of the game and get the victory as they completely hassled Stafford, who is just over 50% completion percentage in this game. Just not good by him. And give full credit to the Titans defense, who I didn't have much faith in this team, and I'm really curious to see kind of how things go on from them, especially because they get the Raiders next week, and that you would think is going to be a shootout because the Raiders can't stop anybody. But I thought this was going to be for that exact same reason. So maybe Tennessee's a little bit more for real than I thought. But, only time will tell, really.
Yeah, and I'm the one who's been high on Tennessee, and I've been kind of worried about them. This game showed me that they do have some of that in the gas tank, that they do have that running game in their back pocket, and it can be useful. I thought DeMarco Murray coming into this year was going to have a pretty good year, honestly. I think between him and Derrick Henry, they were going to be a force to be reckoned with. And, of course, Mariota has his weapons. Sure, he doesn't have the top elite receivers in this league, but he has guys that can definitely, cause some damage. So I really felt like this offense was going to be better. In this game, they did well. They did enough to win this game. And I feel like, the Lions actually kind of underperformed because of what we saw in week 1 was so exciting. And the way that Matthew Stafford was handling himself, it was like we were watching Matthew Stafford from 2 or 3 years ago, where he was just burning holes in all the teams. So I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of looking at both these teams like, well, who are they? But I am kind of impressed that Tennessee was able to pull out this victory.
Certainly. And we got a couple games left here. The Dallas Cowboys go into Washington and do what they do against Washington in Maryland, which usually win. And Dak Prescott looks good again. He again does not commit an interception or a turnover. His first touchdown is a running touchdown. He still hasn't had the passing variety. Ezekiel Elliott decides that he likes to fumble the ball on this day. And Alfred Morris gets to score on his old team to basically win the game. So, and honestly, the Dallas defense shows up when it had to. They didn't show up for a lot of the game, but they showed up on the last 3 drives when they had to, and basically made it to where the Redskins couldn't score to put themselves ahead. Dallas holds on. They win a very key divisional game. What do you think, Gary?
Just to touch on this really quickly, because I think this year, I think would be fun is if I take the opposite team and just defend them to the no end. But I look at this as, really honestly, Dak Prescott played another smart game. He's kind of doing what Simeon's doing over there in Denver. And just, game managing, finding ways to keep the ball in his team's hands and not the other team's. He's not doing with Ezekiel Elliott. Surprisingly enough, this is the tale of 2 different tapes. People thought Ezekiel Elliott was going to come into this year and have a pretty good year right away, and Dak was going to, if he even played, he was going to struggle. And it's been the opposite. Ezekiel Elliott still got a lot of learning, whereas Dak Prescott seems like he's a little bit further along. And I don't know. I mean, I think the one thing that Dallas can point to is that they got the ball to Dez Bryant, which they didn't do against the Giants. That helped him out a lot. And I think,
Breeland could not defend him at all.
Breeland couldn't cover anybody at all. That's just opposite, Norman. It was bad news for the Redskins. So, if I play the opposite side, I want to play the Washington Redskins and put that hat on. And I'm looking at it and saying the only reason the Dallas Cowboys won this game is because Kirk Cousins was just inaccurate in the first half. Just seemed to float balls, underthrew guys. He had, at least in this entire game, 4 home runs. If he would have connected with 4 of the passes that were wide open for just home run touchdowns, he would have had, this game blown out for the Washington Redskins.
Not only that, on that drive where the Church gets the interception, they made some dumb play calls. Like, we're just we're going to fades twice. Then they got that lucky call to put it back at the 1, and they do the same thing again. And it's like, what are you doing? Eventually, people are going to catch on to what you're doing. You're not running it because you can't. Because Matt Jones got that 1 score, and he had a couple other nice runs. But other than that, they kind of contained him because he's kind of still been Matt Jones, and he throws it right there in the middle, and Church just comes and gets it. I mean, it's just. He was inaccurate for more than just that first half. He was inaccurate for various parts of the game where he didn't look like the Kirk Cousins right now of last year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I mean, he did come out in better shape. I'm just saying he wasn't as inaccurate. He may have missed a few, but it was like he was missing at least 50% of his passes in the first half. So.
All right. Not only was he missing passes, as far as incompletions go, a lot of his completions were just in the wrong spots, not allowing his receivers to catch the ball and run with it. So you could definitely tell he was tentative, and we'll see how long that lasts. As you remember, he turned down the contract and just took the franchise tag, betting on himself to get that big contract at the end of the year. And maybe he's trying to force things and he's playing a little tight. You could definitely kind of tell that here. Full credit to Dallas, who played a great game. I continue to be impressed more and more by Dak Prescott every time I watch him, especially for a rookie quarterback. Yes, Elliott kind of has a little bit of the fumble issue that he needs to work on, but it was a great moment to see Alfred Morris get the game-winning touchdown against his former team. That's always fun to watch a player stick it to his former guys. I did have Washington winning this game, but they made too many mistakes, and it wasn't just Kirk Cousins. Not saying that they were going to be able to finish his drive as they were running out of time, but that last drive, they get it down to the 36-yard line, and the center false started as he kind of double pumped the snap when everyone was ready, and they were just going to spike it. So they got all the way down to the 36-yard line. Could have had a couple shots to either get halfway there and then score if they could have hit the sideline, or a couple shots at the end zone. Turns out they only had the one shot after that. So a lot of mental errors all around. Dallas had the fewer, and this was just your typical NFC East battle between two pretty evenly matched teams. Going into the season, I thought it was going to come down to Washington and New York, and I do still think New York. I thought Washington was going to win the division. I might be switching that to New York the way they've been playing. But Dallas is right in the mix. I didn't think they would with Dak Prescott. I thought the growing pains would take a few more lumps than I was thinking a few people were expecting. But he is playing extremely well, and as Sean said, still no interceptions. So that's the key when you're a rookie quarterback, is not turning the ball over. So full credit to him.
Like Garrett said, he's just being smart. That screen pass that he throws to Swaim, where he gets him out of that jam. It's just like the guy's coming at him. It's like a lot of quarterbacks, that are at the same age as Prescott, maybe don't just think the reaction of, okay, I got to get this out. Let's just throw it to him. They wilt and start trying to evade that defender, and they get themselves in trouble. And Dak didn't do that, so he's shown a lot just in this time here.
I'm really curious to see what happens as these games come by, because he seemed more comfortable in this game, taking the chance to run the ball to get a touchdown, seeming like he was more interested in throwing the ball down the field this game.
Yeah, Dez got all those passes to Dez.
So we'll see. I'm curious. I'm watching two quarterbacks in this league right now. I'm really curious, Simeon and Dak Prescott, and seeing who ends up being the guy who kind of breaks out of their shell.
Next week they get the Bears on Sunday night, so should be an interesting matchup there, especially if Brian Hoyer's the one playing quarterback. Speaking of quarterbacks and the Sunday night matchup, you had Aaron Rodgers taking on his division foe, with Sam Bradford making his first start for the Minnesota Vikings, and him and Stephon Diggs had a day. Stephon Diggs, 182 yards and a touchdown. Bradford, 286 yards and 2 touchdowns. Somebody said he was going to suck or something over there. With Peterson doing absolutely nothing. And then he gets hurt and he has a torn meniscus, so Peterson's probably he's out for sure week 3. I think they're just playing around. I think when you have torn meniscus, you're not just out 1 week. Normally you're out multiple weeks. So you might be seeing Matt Alciata and Jarrett McKinnon kind of splitting duties for a while. The Vikings defense held Eddie Lacy in check. They made it hard for Aaron Rodgers, even through an interception. The Vikings know what to do with the Packers, and stadium debut goes well for them. They win by 3 points.
And let's be honest. Who really thought that Sam Bradford was going to have that performance?
No, nobody did.
It's just...
Especially not to have Diggs almost get 200 yards.
Exactly. And, I thought Diggs was going to have a terrible year, in which the year's not over. We were only in 2 games in, but it's very encouraging to see this. I've been a big proponent of Stephon Diggs. He's such a big talent. And, of course, if you play fantasy football, a couple of years ago, you were in love with this guy because you were able to get him off the waiver wire. But, man, this is some hope. And I don't know if it's a promise, but at least you get a chance to see that, he has a quarterback that's interested in finding him and getting him the ball. And it also encourages me to think that maybe Sam Bradford's in a place that is comfortable for him.
The offensive line's still a little bit shaky, though. They were still coming at Bradford a lot.
Oh yeah,
and of course he does have that hand injury. We'll have to see if he plays. going forward, because I think Zimmer did make a mention about they might have to get Sean Hill ready again. Jordy Nelson looked more like Jordy Nelson in this game too. So that big catch that he made, much more like what we're normally used to seeing from him. Randy?
Sorry, I'm trying to look up this thing, and the internet's not cooperating me, but I still don't think Sam Bradford was that great. You can.
That's fine.
You can,
I'm just...
even in this performance, yes, he threw for 286 yards. Yes, his completion percentage was there, but it's all Stephon Diggs. When he has more than half of your receiving yards, I was trying to look up his yak, and I can't find a website that does it per game. Because there was a few plays where he would hit him like 7 or 8 yards down the field, and then next thing you know, Diggs is off to the races for a while. So he had an outstanding game. To me, it was more the defense against Aaron Rodgers, completely keeping him off balance. Green Bay just gave up on Eddie Lacy. He wasn't even out there for most of the second half, which was really surprising because the game was so close, and they just kind of went into their hurry-up offense and used more of James Stark. So we'll kind of see how that goes. As I thought Lacy looked okay, minus the one time they were at the 1 yard line, and he didn't know how to get into the end zone the 2 or 3 times they gave it to him, and then he rolled out, and Aaron Rodgers threw it to Jordy Nelson, and I lost a fantasy matchup by 10 points when I had Eddie Lacy and I was facing Aaron Rodgers and Jordy Nelson. But no, I'm not bitter at all. Thanks a lot, Eddie Lacy, for not getting in end zone and costing me. No, I'm just okay. But listen, Minnesota's still going to be fine with whoever they're out there. I really thought that they were going to drop off, but I did not give this defense enough credit. They're going to keep themselves in games. Sam Bradford is out there not to make mistakes. We will see kind of what happens with the running game, as we weren't able to see whether having Bradford out there was going to open up said running game with Adrian Peterson going down early on, though he didn't look that good to begin with. So it's going to be interesting, but I said it a few times. This was, the home team winning the first round of division rivalry, and don't be surprised if Green Bay answers back the next time. But it was a great Sunday night football game.
And the Packers always play Peterson really well, too. So, if they know that there's one guy they got to stop on the Vikings, they always try to make it Adrian Peterson. So that doesn't surprise me at all. Plus, they had we want to see if Bradford can do something kind of thing. So there was probably extra thought given to make sure we stop Peterson here. But, and then Stephon Diggs for all the great things you did. This goes to somebody else, and I cannot remember which game it was. Stephon Diggs wound up not costing his team the game. Somebody did get a stupid taunting penalty that cost their team the game because he got it at the absolute wrong time. Seriously, guys. Like, I get it that it's the heat of the moment or whatever, but you've got to just be professional. Taunt later. Like, when the game's over. Like, this... And it wasn't just in 2 games. I don't know how many taunting penalties got called on this freaking week, but it's getting to the point where either the referees are just getting quick to the trigger with these things and it's really not that big a deal, or people are just doing a little bit too much. But, we're probably going to have more of these 15 yards that you're costing the team are kind of important sometimes. Just be aware of that. Top 5 power rankings go like this. Not a whole lot of change here. Denver, because they're 2-0, they won. New England again, 2-0, they won. Pittsburgh, 2-0, they won again. Carolina, they bounce back and win. And Arizona bounces back and wins too by a lot. So, yeah, there you go. There's your top 5. Of course, you can go to w2mnet.com sometime on Tuesday, and you'll get to see the full power rankings with everybody else's votes, and of course our Blues for those rankings as well. And yeah, that's gonna. Oh, who's our player of the week, guys?
I think Cam Newton has a strong vote of confidence, if you ask me.
And my vote would go to Stephon Diggs. I think he led that team. So
That's where I was gonna go. Stephon Diggs. You know, receivers don't all get 192 yards very much.
That's true. Very true. There you go.
All right, so Stephon Diggs, week 2, player of the week for us here at Football to the Max. And so that's going to do it for the show this week. Hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you guys later. See you on Thursday talking about that Patriots and Texans game.
The following podcast is a W2M Network original production. Visit W2Mnet.com for all of our other great podcasts, plus news, reviews, articles, and opinions from the worlds of wrestling, video games, football, and entertainment.